Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched the white silk of her wedding dress, the fabric now wrinkled from her desperate grip. The moonlight streaming through the tall windows of the old manor house cast eerie shadows across the room where she had taken refuge. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain it could be heard through the thick wooden door she had barricaded behind her. The wedding ceremony had ended hours ago, but instead of the joy she had anticipated, terror now consumed every fiber of her being. The guests had long since departed, leaving behind only the lingering scent of roses and the echo of celebration that now felt like a cruel mockery of her current situation. Marcus had seemed like the perfect husband during their courtship. Charming, wealthy, and attentive, he had swept her off her feet with grand gestures and promises of a fairy tale life. Her family had been thrilled with the match, especially her father, who saw the union as a way to secure their financial future. But something had changed the moment they were pronounced husband and wife. The transformation had been subtle at first. A possessive hand on her arm that lingered too long, a sharp look when she spoke to other guests, and whispered words that sent chills down her spine. As the evening progressed, and the guests began to leave, Marcus's behavior became increasingly unsettling. His eyes had taken on a predatory gleam that made her stomach churn with dread. Sarah pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear any sound from the hallway beyond. The manor house, with its creaking floors and long corridors, seemed to amplify every noise. She could hear footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving through the house like a hunter stalking his prey. The sound made her blood run cold. She thought about her sister Emma, who had tried to warn her just weeks before the wedding. Emma had heard rumors about Marcus from his previous relationships, stories that painted a disturbing picture of controlling behavior and worse. But Sarah had dismissed these concerns as jealousy or misunderstanding. Now, trapped in this room on what should have been the happiest night of her life, she realized how foolish she had been. The footsteps stopped outside her door, and Sarah held her breath. The brass doorknob turned slowly, testing the lock she had frantically engaged moments before. When it didn't budge, she heard a low chuckle that made her skin crawl. "Sarah, my dear wife." Marcus's voice came through the door, honey-sweet, yet laced with something dark. "Come now. This is no way to begin our marriage. Open the door." She remained silent, backing away from a door until she felt the cold stone of the window behind her. The drop from this second-story window would be dangerous, but staying in this room felt far more perilous. "I know you can hear me. Sarah, we need to discuss your behavior tonight. Running away from your husband on your wedding night is quite unbecoming." His voice had lost its facade of charm, revealing something much more sinister beneath. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to remember the layout of the house. The manor belonged to Marcus's family and was filled with secret passages and hidden rooms, according to the stories he had told her during their engagement. At the time, those tales had seemed romantic and mysterious. Now they felt like warnings she had failed to heed. She remembered the housekeeper, Mrs. Blackwood, who had worked for the family for decades. The elderly woman had given Sarah strange looks throughout the evening, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Perhaps she knew something about the dark secrets hidden within these walls. The sound of metal scraping against metal made Sarah's heart skip a beat. Marcus was trying to pick the lock, his patience apparently exhausted. She had minutes, maybe less, before he would be in the room with her. Frantically, she searched the room for anything that could help her escape or defend herself. The heavy silver candlesticks on the mantelpiece caught her eye, but she knew that physical resistance might only make her situation worse. She needed to be smart, not brave. Her eyes fell on the thick curtains hanging beside the window. If she could fashion them into a rope of sorts, she might be able to lower herself down far enough to make the jump survivable. It was a desperate plan, but desperation had become her closest companion. As she began tearing at the fabric, trying to work as quietly as possible, she heard the lock finally give way. The door creaked open slowly, and Marcus's shadow fell across the floor like a dark omen. "There you are, my beautiful bride," he said, his voice now completely devoid of warmth. "Did you really think you could hide from me in my own house?" Sarah turned to face him, the makeshift rope clutched in her hands. In the moonlight, Marcus looked like a stranger. Gone was the charming man who had courted her with poetry and flowers. In his place stood someone whose eyes held a coldness that made her understand just how much danger she was truly in. "Please, Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't want to be here. Let me go home to my family." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with deliberate slowness. "This is your home now, Sarah, and I am your family. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us." The way he said those words, with such calm certainty, terrified her more than any shouting or threats could have. This was not a man who could be reasoned with or persuaded to show mercy. This was someone who saw her not as a person with her own will and desires, but as a possession to be controlled. Sarah gripped the curtain fabric tighter, measuring the distance between herself and the window. She would have one chance, and she had to make it count. The alternative was too horrible to contemplate. "I can see what you're thinking," Marcus said, moving closer with predatory grace. "But there's nowhere to run, Sarah. This house has been in my family for generations, and it has seen many brides come and go. Some learned to be obedient wives. Others—" He let the sentence hang in the air like a threat. The implication of his words hit her like a physical blow. She was not the first woman to find herself in this situation, trapped and helpless in this house of horrors. The thought of what might have happened to those who came before her gave her the courage she needed to act. Without warning, she spun toward the window and began working frantically with the latch. The old mechanism was stiff with age and neglect, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. Behind her, she heard Marcus curse and lunge forward. The window finally gave way, swinging open to reveal the night air and the gardens below. Sarah didn't hesitate. Clutching the fabric rope, she threw herself over the windowsill just as Marcus's hand brushed her shoulder. The descent was faster than she had hoped, and she hit the ground hard, pain shooting through her ankle as she rolled into the flower bed below. But she was free, at least for the moment. Above her, Marcus's face appeared in the window, twisted with rage. "You can run, Sarah, but you cannot hide forever. This house has many secrets, and I know every one of them. I will find you." Sarah limped away from the house, using the shadows of the garden to conceal her movement. She needed help, but who could she trust? The local authorities were likely in Marcus's pocket, given his family's influence in the area. Her own family was too far away, and she had no way to reach them. As she stumbled through the darkness, her wedding dress torn and muddy, she realized that survival would require more than just escape. She needed to uncover the truth about Marcus and his family, about what had happened to those other brides he had mentioned. Only then could she hope to truly break free from the nightmare her wedding day had become. The abandoned groundskeeper's cottage at the edge of the estate provided Sarah with temporary shelter as dawn broke over the horizon. Her ankle throbbed with each heartbeat, and the torn wedding dress offered little protection against the morning chill. She had managed to find some old blankets and a rusted tin of water, but she knew this refuge would not remain safe for long. Through the grimy window, she watched as search parties spread out across the grounds. Marcus had wasted no time in organizing his staff to find her, and she could see the determination in their movements. These people had served his family for years, and their loyalty ran deeper than any sympathy they might feel for a frightened bride. Sarah's thoughts turned to Mrs. Blackwood, the housekeeper who had served the family for decades. If anyone knew the dark secrets of the manor house, it would be her. The elderly woman had tried to catch Sarah's attention several times during the wedding reception, but Marcus had always intervened, steering the conversation away or pulling Sarah in another direction. As she watched the search parties move methodically through the gardens, Sarah noticed that Mrs. Blackwood was not among them. Perhaps the housekeeper was still in the house, and perhaps she could be convinced to help. It was a dangerous gamble, but Sarah was running out of options. The cottage had a back entrance that led to a service path used by the groundskeepers. If Sarah could make it to the main house without being seen, she might be able to find Mrs. Blackwood and learn the truth about what had happened to the previous brides Marcus had mentioned. Sarah waited until the search parties had moved to the far end of the estate before making her move. Using the overgrown hedgerows as cover, she limped toward the servants' entrance of the manor house. Every shadow seemed to hide potential danger, and every sound made her heart race with fear. The servants' entrance was unlocked, as was customary during the day. Sarah slipped inside, finding herself in the kitchen area where the staff prepared meals. The familiar sounds of a working household echoed through the corridors, but she noticed that many of the staff members seemed subdued, as if they too were affected by the strange events of the morning. She made her way carefully through the narrow back passages that connected the